when we are engaging in the dismissal intervention, they call it a dismissal interview. I don't see it as an interview as much as it's an intervention. We want to make sure that the employee is treated with respect and dignity. Even if they don't afford it back to us, they are owed that. And if they are not treated with dignity and respect, that leaves us open for lawsuits. So it is important, no matter what, no matter how volatile, angry they are, obviously you set firm boundaries for behaviors, but we don't treat them inappropriately, illegally, or without due process. Um, Obviously, there are reasons we're going to have to be very clear about exactly why they're being let go, and what works best, right? The manager needs to be there. Yes, you want to have two people in the room. You want to have somebody from HR and you want to have the manager who are going to be communicating clearly what the performance or behavioral issues were, why they are going to be let go now because we have done these interventions. You want to make sure that you're very clear about what you've done, and they have not responded, so therefore they will be let go. You want to be very straightforward. You don't want to lie, but we are not going to be in a situation where we're going to try to be passive or not be explicit. This is not a time to mince words. It is a time to be absolutely clear um, what it is that they did. We want to focus on the actions or the inactions that the person took. We're not going to sit here and say you're a horrible person. That's not the case. We're not attacking the person. We're attacking the behaviors. So we always want to put the attention on these are the things you did. These are the things that were wrong. We did these things to try to intervene. You did not respond accordingly. You continue to make the same mistakes. We need to let you go. And so you want to also provide to them, verbally as well as in writing, the timeline of what is going to happen and when it's going to happen. So um, on this date, you'll receive this letter, and this information is when you need to go to unemployment. These are those reasons, this reason, this reason. Now, there are some circumstances where when there's gross misconduct or when there is somebody who um, uh, is very disrespectful to the chain of command and to the bosses, has engaged in horrible, illegal, or unethical behaviors, they're not necessarily going to be eligible for unemployment. We'll talk more about that when we talk about legal issues and compensation related issues. But assuming that that it's simply we're letting them go and it doesn't rise to gross misconduct, the individual will then turn around and apply for unemployment insurance, and we give them the paperwork, let them know where they need to reach out, what would be appropriate for them, and when they can expect severance pay if that's going to be the case. And severance doesn't happen when people are getting fired. Severance happens when they're getting laid off. So we may choose to give them severance pay, and so they need to know when they're going to receive that and how much it will be and what it'll look like. So there's a whole set of things that need to happen here, and it needs to be done, again, professionally, respectfully, with really clear boundaries and expectations for behaviors. And while we are doing this verbally, it is important to know that when someone's getting fired or laid off, typically they're not going to hear all the things that they need to know, and they're going to forget things because it's an emotional experience. And when they're in fight or flight mode, which is what this will be, it's an emotional experience that puts people into fight or flight mode, they're not going to hear all the things. Their attention is going to narrow, and suddenly in their head they're going, oh my God, I have a mortgage payment next month. How am I going to pay my bill? I was going to buy a new car. Now I can't get a new car. My kid is sick. What am I going to do for insurance? And their head is already spinning with the what ifs and how am I going to fix this and what's going on and why do I need to deal with this. So it is really important that we put everything in writing, as well as share it with them verbally, but also to put everything in writing and then to follow up with an email communicating everything in writing, so they not only have the piece of paper in front of them that you're handing them, they've had the verbal words that you're communicating with them, and then they have it in an email format, which is probably the most important thing, because then they can't lose that, and they won't have that. They'll have that to refer back to in that circumstance. Again, make sure we're focusing on the behaviors, not the person. We are not criticizing the person. We are criticizing the actions or inactions, for that matter, that they have taken that have caused this. When we let people go, then how do we let the department know? How do we let their coworkers know that they've left? And basically, we protect their privacy. People don't need to know the reason why someone was let go, why someone was laid off, why someone was fired. Often people already know anyway because they're the ones that are working with that individual. They see the disruptive behaviors, they see the poor performance, but it is not our job to communicate that to them. It's our job to simply say, this individual will be let go. They will no longer work with us anymore. You just need to know this. We tried to intervene on a number of occasions, and they did not respond to those interventions, so therefore we needed to let go. And we can talk in broad generalities like that because people need to know there is a process. And when people see the transparency of the process and they know, oh, so when my boss comes to me and says we need to fix this and I choose not to fix it, I could be let go as well. So we want them to know what the process is. So we can tell them the process. We had a problem. We had an incident. We tried to address it. They did not fix it. We gave them several warnings. Nothing changed. It's time to go. And that's how we would proceed through that discussion with their coworkers. And then we will talk with them about, and here's what we're doing to replace that person. In the meantime, we're going to ask you guys to do this, and then we're going to go through the process of hiring somebody to replace them, just so you know where the disruptions might be. So they need to know this as well because it's going to impact them. Another thing that we should be concerned about, and I think the materials does go into this with layoffs, is survivor guilt, right? Somebody who's left behind. And survivor guilt may happen if someone is let go, laid off for some reason. Fired for some reason. Layoffs, we are more likely to see survivor guilt. But we can also potentially see this when someone is fired, because then we have, what could that happen to me? And, I did some bad things and I didn't get caught or I didn't get punished like that. And what would happen if it's me? And so people start to spin a little bit too. So we need to make sure we're dealing with their emotions around the circumstances and what happened and why. Layoffs are a little bit different, as we've already said, from a dismissal for cause, whether it's a disciplinary issue or a performance-based issue. Involuntary turnover as a layoff is simply a dismissal because we don't have the economic means to continue to support the work that they do, whether it's a division, a department, you name it. It could also be, strategically speaking, this division has been poor performing. We've decided to reallocate those funds into other projects, and we are going to get rid of this product line. And so some people may be moved to different positions. More often than not, the division or the department ends up getting laid off entirely. Not because they were poor performers, but sometimes the nature of business, the product that they're selling doesn't sell well, so they need to figure out, what they're going to do, and often it involves a layoff or a restructuring of the business in some ways. And it is always more than one employee. If you're just laying off one person, it feels like a firing, and that's not really a legitimate way to go. If you're going to go through with the process of a layoff, then it really needs to be much more strategic about how we reallocate resources and processes and things of that nature. So it's going to involve multiple people. And now again, I will remind you that it is so important for you to make sure when you're doing layoffs that there's a strategy behind what you're doing and how you're rearranging things, particularly if, the issue is this is a division or department that hasn't been making money. Well, then strategically, how should we improve it to make more money? So if we get rid of a couple of different positions and we reallocate the process by which we do things, could that be a better solution? Could we streamline things, be more efficient? And that's called business process reengineering. It was a term that was really hot in the 90s. Less so now, but it gets at the same idea. we need to make sure when we're reallocating our resources as in making the decision to do a layoff that we have worked really hard to streamline what we do to make things better. As in any separation, there are costs to it. You've got people who have been laid off who feel like they are victims because the company has made some poor decisions, perhaps, and they haven't stayed on top of performance the way they should have, and the workers are doing what they were asked to do, and unfortunately, that was not enough. And so they are kind of like victims because the company has made a financial decision, and they are the people left in the rubble, right, and having to rearrange things. And those layoff victims are challenged, feel betrayed, feel um, uh, that they were not trusted. They may be angry because they asked for support and never got it, and then ultimately they were let go. There's a whole host of, obviously, of issues kind of going on behind the scenes. And there's going to be, there may be some resentment, there may be some sadness, there may be some anger and frustrations and fear because when we are laid off, we don't know when we're going to find another job. And if it's a poor economy, it makes it even more challenging for me to be able to find a job. Um, Survivor guilt, as I already said before, is a big thing. Less so with dismissals, but much more so with layoffs. Because if the person sitting next to me, who I thought was a good person and they did a good job, they're let go, but I'm here, I'm still here. Why? Why am I still here? Why do I not have, um, uh, why am I not let go? Why are they let go and I'm not? And so that creates a lot of anxiety for people, and it might stop them from doing performance because they spend a lot of time then thinking about, well, why wasn't I let go, and why can't, why didn't I, and why wouldn't I, and why can't I? All the whys, right? All behind in their heads, and so that can hamper their performance. And so we want to manage that right away. When we do a layoff, we have to then work with our survivors to make them know that this is the reasons why we made these decisions. We've reallocated resources, that we made determinations based on their performance that they would be the best person for this job. It doesn't mean that the person sitting next to them wasn't a good performer. It simply means that the skills that they had were not needed, but the skills that this person had is needed. And so communicating that is going to be really important. But layoffs can absolutely impact the well-being of people in the organization as well as the people who are leaving. There's always going to be negative impacts. Psychological and physical well-being is always a concern. Even if you're the one delivering the message, there's a psychological impact that it has on you because it's hard to do that. There was a movie with George Clooney a bunch of years ago where he basically traveled all over the place and laid people off, and he pretty much would turn around and go, we're letting you go, and that's that. And he was very cold and indifferent about it until he realized, wow, this is going to be really hard. And he, sort of changed his approach to things. It's a very interesting movie. I wish I could remember the name of it off the top of my head right now. But even the one delivering the message eventually is impacted by that. Unemployment insurance is typically offered to people who are through or let go for involuntary turnover for layoffs. We also offer unemployment insurance for people who just don't respond to training properly. They, for no fault of their own, we thought they could do the job. They can't. And we often will say, you can apply for unemployment insurance. Here's your paperwork. You can do this. Disciplinary issues less likely to be offered unemployment insurance. And even if you apply for it, the company may challenge you. And I've had a circumstance where someone engaged in a really bad behavior, gross misconduct. They did not do the job they were supposed to do. They almost messed up a multi-million-dollar deal because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, and then they didn't show up to work for a few days, came back as if nothing happened. They were let go, and then they were told that they were not eligible for unemployment insurance. They applied anyway, and they were rejected. They did not get their unemployment insurance.